All right, I'd like to call to order the Urban Design Commission meeting for Wednesday, November 18th, 2009. We'll begin with roll call.
Mark Kimmerer.
Here.
James Dougherty.
Here.
Douglas Gasek.
Here.
Patrick Coleman.
Here.
Andrew Garcia. Here. Patricia Joyner.
Here.
Jim Sawhill.
Here.
Jeff Dinwiddie.
And so usually we'd be approving the minutes. There was no minutes in our packet, so I guess we'll be doing that at the next meeting. Next is special order business disclosures. Does anyone have any disclosures they'd like to make tonight? I don't see any. So then we move on to the consent agenda. Okay. All right. And do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Okay. Mr. Sawhill has moved. It's been seconded by Commissioner Joyner. Any opposition to passing the consent agenda? Hearing and seeing none, consent agenda passes. Next item is unfinished business, which we have none, and the regular agenda. It looks like our case has been postponed indefinitely. So, Sharon, did you have something to discuss with regard to this plan that you included in the packet?
Yes, I could. Yes, with that new plan, it's something we've just started implementing a few weeks ago, although you can see it was passed by the Assembly a year ago, but we're just now getting around to actually implementing it. So I'm having to remind petitioners when they submit that when they come in and they've been submitting for a draft design study report and thinking that's the process, and I have to tell them, no, we're doing this new process, and you have to go back and first submit the concept report, because that's the first step, is the concept report, and then and the second step is the draft DSR, and then the third step is they come to UDC, and they'll be coming to these UDC just one time at 65%. So it's a bit different, because previously for road projects, they were going one time to the Planning and Zoning Commission at draft DSR, and then coming to UDC for the final two steps. Now it's still 3 steps, but instead of 1 P&Z and 2 UDC, it's now 2 P&Z and 1 UDC. And we talked about 65%, and it's something I wanted to discuss with you all, or let you know about it anyway. But I was talking to Ralph Rentz about this process where they're only going to come to UDC at once at 65%, and they'll be coming for final approval of the site plan, meaning all the engineering, all the site plan information that you normally look at, as well as final landscape plan. And Ralph said, and I wanted to, ask Mark about this, but Ralph says, I don't even have my plant names on the plans. I haven't even decided what plants I'm going to use. He says, I know where I want the plants, but he said, actually, to figure out which plants I want, I don't do that until the very end. It's the last thing I design, is to figure out which plants I want. So, Mark, in your experience, for you or maybe others in your firm, at 65%, would you normally know what plants you want to use and have a complete plant schedule?
We'd have a pretty good idea, and I think a part of what's driven that in the past has been that for our first UDC submittal, we're supposed to have a complete landscape plan with all the plants chosen. So often we feel like we are jumping the gun a bit by having it at that level.
Right.
But at 65%, I'd say generally we know where, I would say what our trees are going to be, maybe not the whole concept for planting. It would be right around at that phase, though, that you would want to get that information together, mostly because of cost estimates, I believe.
Okay. Okay. So, the question is, would the commissioners feel comfortable enough doing a final approval when, a lot of the kind of, that sort of stuff is not yet settled yet? Sometimes you may not even know maybe what all the trees are, or maybe don't know at all what the shrubs are, but would maybe know what the trees are.
But couldn't you alter the request? I mean, instead of saying 65%, and 65% can mean different things to different firms,
Right.
but have more of a list of deliverables that the packet would require, and a plant list would be one of them.
Okay.
And that wouldn't necessarily mean 65%. It would just mean certain pieces of the design are complete.
Yeah, and Ralph's response to that was, when I said that, he said, so what you're really doing is asking for a 95% at 65%. And so, in terms of the plant materials, but I was wondering, so I was either going to call a meeting with some of the landscape architects who submit on a regular basis to the Urban Design Commission, just to ask them the question I just asked Mark, to see if they'd see any problems about having to submit for at 65%, and just ask them how far along they are in terms of knowing what plant materials they want to use.
Well, kind of following up on what Jane said, it seems better to have a list of what we need to see than say some percentage, because if different people think that percentage, it means different things, that isn't very consistent across.
Right.
I mean, if we need to have certain information to prove it, whatever percentage it is.
Right. I could probably do that with the plant materials, but I don't know how I'm going to do that with site plan. What degree of details should they show for the site plan?
What percentage are they at now when they come for the first time?
At 35%.
Oh. See, it seems, yeah.
Mark, can you put your mic on?
There is a differentiation. At 65%, that's likely going to be when you have more of your plants figured out. At 35%, you're not going to.
Right, and often 35%, we're just seeing circles, really, with no plants really shown on them. And that's fine for 35%.
Yeah, oftentimes what I think would be appropriate to submit would be where the plants are and what they are, but
Yeah.
maybe not all the quantities listed and the sizes and all
Right,
that.
right,
That's just a lot of extra work early.
yeah.
Would we get into talking about quantities as this commission? I mean,
No, the quantities are really something for the contractor, or for bidding, but no, you guys wouldn't need to know the quantities, just what plants, are intended to be used and what size. I think that's really all that we need at 65.
Well, we have when things are way over planted, but maybe we'd know that.
But you could tell just by looking at
I
the
mean,
plans.
we wouldn't
Yeah.
need to count it up. You can just
Oh,
look
yeah.
at it and
Yeah.
see if it feels too dense. I mean, the other thing is we get into spacing, spacing issues, things like that, and that should be pretty apparent at 65.
Yeah, I mean, the scale will be on there. We'll know what the spacing is.
So I'm sorry, Sharon, when does it go to P&Z and at what phases?
It goes to P&Z the first time at a concept report, and that's detailed in that report. It tells you, kind of explains that process. But, and then they go back again at draft DSR.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what's the process? I mean, it seems like they're asking for final approval. If we don't like it, would we just say no, or does it come back to us again? How does that work?
Yeah, I guess that you would have that option if you see something. pretty major that you don't like that would cause them to come back again, yeah, you would have that ability to do that. But I guess it's going to be up to staff to do the final review at 95 or 100%. That really hasn't been sorted out yet either. You know, am I the one that's supposed to look at the final, or the whole process in terms of UDC and my involvement ends at 65%? I don't know that that's been determined yet.
What's P&Z's last review?
At draft DSR. I mean, and that's all that they were seeing now. Now they're getting an earlier shot at it before they see it at draft DSR.
And what would be the harm of waiting until it was 95% complete before it came before our board?
You all wouldn't have the opportunity to make any changes. It would be too far along. And another important part, when we were discussing this internally, I said, yeah, they might be submitting it at 65%, but the UDC doesn't see it until 2 months later. And so by that time, they'll be at 80%. And the response from PM&E was, no, they'll have to hold the design at 65%. And they cannot move beyond 65% until they've come to the UDC. So we'll still be early enough in the process that you all can make changes to it, and they'll be done.
I'm not familiar with all the acronyms and stuff, but in my construction experience, having done a couple of design builds, usually my civil and structural is, you know, at like 80, 90% by the time my architectural and mechanical and electrical is at 65. Mm-hmm. So when you're talking 65%, are you talking which portion of the design is at 65?
It's going to be the civil and the site plan and the landscaping. It should all be at 65%.
Okay, because usually, I don't know, in my experience...
I know, civil is probably in advance because you can't do the rest without having to have the civil, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're just talking about where you're throwing up trees and shrubs and how many, I mean, that's sort of...
Right.
Those areas have been established based on the civil design.
That have already been done previously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're seeing it at 95%, I'm sorry, it's done. You know, they're not going to redesign a building structurally at that point. Or if we're just talking about buildings, I mean, roads are going to be another issue as well.
That's the sort of the difficulty of this new policy. We've had a lot of discussion about how early we should see plans, and then how we verify that the petitioner has picked up the comments from our preliminary look. We want to do it early enough so it doesn't create an undue burden on their design staff, either in time or additional changes that they have to do. When we only see it once, we have to sort of decide we're going to see it really early in the process, and we can't because of the approval process for other boards. But if we see it too late, then we're causing problems for people who really need a timely approval. So we're kind of, it's kind of questionable as to how we can leverage our advice here, because we're really asked to make a final approval. Mm-hmm. And usually we give a bunch of conditions that we'd expect to see for final.
Right.
So in this case, we could give those conditions.
Yeah, sure.
And the final approval would be determined by staff. Then.
Right. So you'll do the conditions, and then when it's at 95% or 100%, really 100%, they'll come back. Well, actually, road projects I typically never see again. But yeah, they would have had to meet all those conditions.
So I'm wondering who decided on the process? You know, I didn't see it in the book.
Yeah, it was the municipal traffic engineer, Bob Kniefel. This was, I think, his brainchild. And then he was working somewhat with, I guess, Jerry Hansen at project management and engineering. And then I think he ran it by Tom Nelson and Jerry Weaver. But when they were looking at this, I was out of town, and when a lot of this decision-making was going on, so on vacation. But
so this process wouldn't preclude us from putting together our standard list of conditions.
Sure. Yeah.
And instead of seeing a conceptual plan, we're seeing actually a more advanced plan.
Right.
With us more information. It just gives them less time to incorporate any comments into their eventual solution.
Yeah, and then you won't see it again, so you don't know how it was incorporated, and I guess you just hope for the best, yeah. That's all that there is.
You have to assume that those conditions...
That they were met. Unless, oftentimes they said, come back and say, well, we tried to do it, but for this and this reason, we are unable to do it. So, but that's fairly typical also. But do bear in mind that they are, not supposed to advance beyond 65% when they get here. So if they say, sorry, we're past that, I've gotten direct information from project management engineering that they are not to advance past 65%. Once they submit, they just sit on it and don't continue to design it.
So do you think you're going to see it again?
Well, I have to get clarification. This is kind of a new thing. I know I'll see it 100% because, no. I mean, typically road projects, a lot of the road projects, I've never seen a road project come back after it's left here.
Because if we're setting conditions and no one ever sees it again, it's sort of like we're advisory and who knows? I mean, it's almost a waste of time.
Yeah, so that's another part of the thing that I guess they'll have to bring it back to me 100% so I can do my thing and make sure all the conditions have been met and stamp and sign it, which I haven't previously done.
And when does the P&Z see it? At the concept report?
Yeah, concept report, and then again at draft design study report, DSR. Yeah, they'll see it before you.
They'll see it twice before we see it.
Exactly.
But not after us?
No.
Okay.
No, you guys are the last stop.
It seems like it would be beneficial that maybe we got to look at it somewhere in the same time period that their second review was, because traditionally we've given advice or recommendations that can get passed along to planning and zoning after our preliminary review.
Right, but I think at draft DSR, really what the commission's role is, or a role that they wanted to hang on to, because, when site plans were taken from Planning and Zoning Commission and moved to the UDC, the expectation at that time that road plans would also go to the UDC, so they would be doing both those. But Planning and Zoning Commission wanted to hang on to the road projects, at least as it concerned the DSR, because they wanted the ability to ask the questions about alternates. The DSR is really just, this is the situation, this is the problem, and these are the alternates that we looked at to solve the problem. And the Planning and Zoning Commission wanted to ask the questions, well, why aren't you doing alternate 3 instead of, your preferred alternative? Can you tell us, explain that? And so they wanted that, they wanted to hold on to that and not let that go to the planning and zoning, to the UDC. So they gave all the site plan and landscape for the road projects to UDC, but not the DSR. But there's really not all that information in terms of site planning and landscaping. It's really not at that level yet. There's not much to look at. It's just looking at the various alternatives.
Were you expecting feedback from us in terms of...
Well, I was, feedback, or just to let you know about this new process. But it just pertains to road projects. Every other project will be the same process as we have been doing.
So there will be different applications for petitioners for road projects than there will be for other projects?
That's a good question. I know that once we get past the Title 21 and UDC's responsibilities have been decided at that point, I know that I've been planning to do a new application that would combine site planning and landscape review all into one application. But I don't know that they'll be doing a different application. They'll just be submitting at 65% and using the same application. The The only other thing to consider, if we need to do anything special application for the consent, what's it called, this concept review, the first review that goes to Planning and Zoning Commission.
Well, there's going to have to be a list of what they need to submit.
Yeah.
A clear list, so they are sure to have those elements.
Right, and I think one of the appendixes in there, if you look in the back in the appendix, it talks about that concept report, or review, or whatever it's called.
I see an outline, concept report outline.
Yeah, there's no specifics on there in terms of, I mean, we don't have at that point any detailed information about it. Maybe early in the process. Yeah, and think of that or tell you what you need to include.
So we'll have a checklist, or they will have a checklist for the 65%, what that means?
Well, what would you that would be on the checklist?
For the 65%?
Yeah, the 65%, if you want a checklist.
You need to speak into the mic.
Well, I think there's one on the current application now that it's supposed to include plants, sizes, et cetera. There's a list of things we're supposed to include on there.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'd really strongly recommend against saying something like a 65% or even a design development submittal. You really need to annotate what that means because, the Corps of Engineers defines it one way and private clients define it another way. You're going to have to come up with a very specific list of what you need.
Yeah, that's clear if Ralph says he never has it and Mark says he usually does. So.
Yeah, I would think anything that would be required for pricing or scope would be defined at 65%. You'd have to know what your plant species are.
Yeah, that may be in already determined, and project management and engineering has very specific requirements at 65%. So whatever PM&E's requirements are going to be automatically end up being our requirements.
I don't know if this needs to go on the record or not, but the PM&E projects seem to be usually woefully insufficient for our needs, as opposed to what the private sector is submitting. Mm-hmm. So they probably need the list more than anybody.
Yeah, right. And so I can go ask them and get their list of what they're expecting to see at 65%.
I believe PM&E is currently developing those lists of what should be on a plan set at 65 and 95.
Yeah.
Because they have inconsistent plan sets currently.
Do they? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're ready to move on?
Yes.
You're racing right along to the rest of the agenda, which there's nothing on it. Don't we have to, there's a couple of new commissioners here, don't we have to do the blindfold and make them walk backwards?
Oh, I'm glad you reminded me of that. I would have forgotten.
Yeah. Either the Magna Carta or Title 21. You have to quote something.
Sorry, I forgot to tell you guys that.
So are we going to swear them in or something, or are you just kidding? Okay, all right.
A couple of housekeeping things. When last meeting we talked about, we did the training and Robert's Rules of Order and all that sort of thing, and there was a question that came up that it bothered me at the meeting and it continued to bother me afterwards because it just didn't make sense. And finally, it dawned on me, rather late in the process, that when you all voted on that case When would that have been? In September, when I was out of town and Francis was here? What case was that again? What project was it?
Sorry.
That was the UAA for the university, the 1%?
Yeah. Was that the one where, yes, that's right. And the question was, and you all voted on it, I think you had a quorum of just 5 at that meeting? And what came up 3-2, I think the vote was, and so it failed. And really, it should have failed. I mean, the way you voted it, when it failed, that was it. It was done. It was no coming back. When you guys brought it back again, technically, legally, that couldn't have been done. You can't bring back a case that you've already voted on and you've had a decision on, and it failed. If it failed, it failed. And only thing, if you didn't mean it to fail and didn't intend it to fail, the only thing you could have done at that point is call it back for reconsideration, and then that would have been on the record for reconsideration, and then the next month's meeting, the same case would have come forward, and then you would have started all over again on it. And what it would have resulted in is a month's delay for the petitioner, but that's how it should have been handled.
How does refresh my memory, how does the reconsideration, is that a motion?
It's a motion, and it can only be done by someone on the prevailing side. So one of the 3 people that voted for it, for approval, would have had to brought it back as a motion for reconsideration.
This board doesn't allow for immediate reconsideration?
I'm told that we don't normally do that, that it would, that you'd make it known that you're going to reconsider it and then bring it back. But I can double check on that, but that's what I was told. But I've seen some boards do immediate reconsideration.
I don't think we did reconsideration anyway. Somebody made a different motion and we considered that one. Isn't
Right.
that what we did?
But should that happen again, that's your recourse, is to call it for reconsideration. But hopefully that doesn't happen, when everybody kind of clues in, your other commissioners, that you don't plan on supporting it, especially when you only have 5 members here. You have to talk to each other and let each other know what you're thinking and why you're thinking that and how you intend to vote. Because if they don't know what your objection is, they can't solve it. They can't, you can't resolve it among all of you. So get all that sorted out before you call the vote.
Is there any mechanism that when the motion is on the floor and it's being discussed and it's clear that you're not going to have unanimous consent, is there anything you can do to sort of cancel the motion at that point before a vote takes place?
You can move to postpone at that point.
Yeah.
When that would have the same effect as a reconsideration, basically.
Right. It's just a different motion with the same effect, I guess. Yeah.
It'd be a new motion.
Yeah.
You could also withdraw the motion. If the motion's on the floor, you could withdraw it.
Even after it's been discussed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Okay.
Before it's voted on, you can do anything with it. But you guys had already voted, and so that was the difficulty. Once you vote, it's done, it's over.
It was an aberration and never happened before. Maybe it'll never happen again.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
I have a quick question. Do we still have a vice chair? Are we needing to?
No, I think I'm going to have to get back with Jay Jackson to see if they've, made any decision yet, but
It's Peter.
we don't at this point. So we may at some point have to take a vote for a vice chair.
Aren't we supposed to vote for a chair and vice chair like annually?
Yeah.
And we didn't we miss
It's supposed
that
to happen
step?
in March.
Okay.
Yeah, I just recently checked on that.
Yeah, you missed a meeting, you may be chair for life.
Yeah, I know, you got to watch that attendance.
And then just one final thing. The curator for 1% for Art, she needs a volunteer for the Spenard Fire Station. If anybody wants to get on that selection for the art jury.
You could put my name in if you want.
Okay, we got 2 contenders. Patrick hasn't done it before. Have you? Have you? Okay, so.
I was scissors, by the way. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. I think that's all I have. Oh, wait, one other thing. I have a handout. This is one other thing that James had asked about at the last meeting. It was the question of if there's only a quorum of 5, we always let the petitioner know, they have the option of postponing or going ahead. It's their choice. And then James had asked the question, is that written down anywhere? And so I went and found the answer to that, and I'll hand that out.
So it's like a no-fee delay kind of thing?
Yeah, one time. It's in your rules of procedure.
So we've already seen this case before, and usually when they come back the second time, they're put on the consent agenda. And the assumption is, especially if they've been recommended for approval, because the idea is that we've put in conditions, the petitioner has presumably complied with all of those conditions as verified by staff, and it's just a matter of us approving and not discussing. Mr. Coleman?
Yeah, regarding the school project, I really liked kind of their front summary sheet that we got that showed all the corrections or changes that they had made. I thought that was really a good thing.
I just was curious about, they were talking about most people get dropped off, and it looks like they only have room for 12 cars to drop people off. So I was sort of interested in if that was going to be a problem with the main street. But I guess that was identified earlier and that it wasn't a problem.
No, it's a problem. It's a huge problem.
Yeah.
Is it?
I've survived the wars at Mears with 2 children, and it's awful. And with this redesign, it'll be a little better, but it'll still be awful.
Okay. I just was checking. It looked like the bus drop-off was great. That plenty of room
Bus
for buses.
drop-off's way better, but
no one takes the bus according to what they were saying.
they don't.
Yeah.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
But you'll see a lot that you didn't see the first one, so you can pull it off and ask things that maybe we missed.
Oh, I didn't see. Is there a budget for a loader or something to plow that long asphalt path they're going to put in going south? Because that's some awesome snow maintenance job.
Yeah.
I'm sure with the slowing economy, that's a great position the municipality just opened up.
Yeah.
There's no
make work,
obligation.
damn shovel.
There's no obligation to plow paths. I mean, couldn't they, it'd just be a footpath? I mean, you wouldn't have to maintain it just because it has lights on it.
Yeah, well, you're right. It's a great thing they put that asphalt path through that open field then, that kids play on.
Yeah, I don't know that they're necessarily going to plow it. Kids just walk through it, I think.
Any other commissioners have any business?
No.
Other than a motion? Oh, yeah. How about a second? There we go. Any objections? No. So we're adjourned. Thanks, guys.